We've got a lame duck leader with no immediate plans to leave. Internal dynamics the Liberal Party has to go through to today to see an election call. The U.S. President seems intent on putting tariffs in place, and so we're in a position now. Hope that we have some stability in the voices that are at the table. Dominic LeBlanc.
It's something you've called for many months. You've called for an election and almost immediately. It looks like that might come in May. Do you believe with this announcement today, ramping up production, that your fight with Ottawa is slowly winding down?
I would say that I have been calling for an election. Whatever internal dynamics the Liberal Party has to go through to get to that point is kind of up to them. But I would have preferred today to see an election call, because I don't think 2 months delay is going to make any bit of difference to how Canadians are looking at this administration. Why do we need an election? We need an election so that whoever is in the chair has a 4-year mandate. And so when we go to negotiate with the United States, there's some certainty about who the players are going to be at the table. So I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't get an election call today. I think that would have been the better outcome, and it would have allowed for the Prime Minister to go to the public and see whether or not they support his agenda of the last number of years. I think the polling results suggest that's not the case. So we're putting this forward, hoping that it becomes a topic of discussion through the leadership race as well as through the general election. We want a willing and supportive partner with the federal government. It would certainly be nice to have a federal government that wasn't looking at ways of continuing to shut down production and stand in the way of this kind of progress. And so optimistically, we hope whoever emerges successful when this is over is going to be able to keep pace with the kind of production we want to do in Alberta.
Premier, how does today's announcement maybe line up with some of the conversations you've had with folks in the U.S., just given the incoming administration's kind of tariff threats? We're still unsure what those tariffs would include.
I'm very concerned. I think from what I am reading on social media and elsewhere, the U.S. President seems intent on putting tariffs in place. And so we're in a position now where we've got a lame duck leader with no immediate plans to leave, with no resolution to who is going to be the bargaining partner until, I think it was suggested, as late as May. So I believe it's up to myself, the other premiers, to make the case to the Americans ourselves in the absence of federal leadership. And so that's why I'm going to the inauguration. I'll be staying there for 4 or 5 days. I hope to be able to put forward the case that I made today about how we are the Americans' best friend and trading partner. We can provide the resources that they need to be successful, and that we are also their biggest consumer. We buy $293 billion worth of products from the United States, which is more than Germany, the UK, Italy, France, and Vietnam combined. So we shouldn't be in the line of sight of the U.S. president. So I would hope that we'll be able to make that case, but it is not helpful having so much uncertainty in who's going to be at the negotiating table. That's why I still think that there should be an election. Let's get that solved sooner rather than later so we can get on with these important discussions. I think that energy is going to be key to getting a Canadian agreement that ensures that none of our products are subject to tariffs. One of the arguments that I've been making is that because we're such a large commodity provider to the United States, they accept our relatively low-cost oil and natural gas and timber and food products and critical minerals, and then they value add that and sell their products to the world, of which Canada is the biggest buyer. So that's a very constructive relationship to have. And I think that by demonstrating that, as the U.S. president talks about with his other international trading partners, he wants them to buy more American oil and gas. In order for that to happen, they have to make sure that they take a North American-wide approach so that we can also provide them with the product that they need in order to have that kind of global energy dominance. So I think that energy is absolutely essential to the Americans achieving that goal, and that's regardless of who happens to be the Prime Minister. Alberta owns a resource. We own 85% of the resource in the province. We export 4.3 million barrels a day to the U.S. That's 56% of what the Americans import. Other provinces export to them a relatively smaller amount, but we think that we are crucial in being able to meet that foundational American aspiration and then be able to make the argument that we shouldn't have tariffs on any Canadian goods altogether because of this important partnership that we have. The Trudeau government did ensure that the 1977 pipeline treaty was respected and did a lot of work to ensure that the Line 5 pipeline did not get shut down, which would have been devastating for the U.S., but also devastating for Ontario and Quebec as well. So I would say that is one way in which his intervention was very positive. The fact that Coastal GasLink and Trans Mountain Pipeline managed to get to the finish line is really important, surprising probably to a lot of people because Trans Mountain was a long process, an expensive process, but it's already proven its worth by stabilizing the price of Western Canada Select and narrowing the differential. And I think we'll see something equally encouraging once Coastal GasLink and the LNG Canada starts exporting. That being said, we could have done so much more. We could have, with federal leadership, potentially got Energy East built. Part of the reason they pulled the plug on that was that they couldn't see a way through to the finish line, even though they'd spent $1 billion. We could have already been well underway with a Northern Gateway, which would be, I think, the most significant egress from our country, exporting off the coast of British Columbia. We could have, with greater leadership, potentially had the Prime Minister make a case for Keystone XL, which would have been well on the way to getting the largest producer of heavy oil attached to the largest production or refining capacity in the Gulf Coast, and that none of that happened. So we had, I think, something like 18 LNG projects that had been put forward. Only one of them is nearing completion. So I think that tells you something, a couple of things about how vitally important this product still is to the world, how vitally important it is to Canada, that even with all the barriers put in the way, somehow the industry managed with the regulators to find their way through. But you can just imagine how different it would be if we had a federal government that was actually supportive of our aspirations to double our oil and gas production, to displace oil and gas from other more hostile regimes, to be a true partner in North American energy security. And so we think it's a new day. So that's why it's been a long time since anyone was prepared to talk about new pipeline production, new pipeline access. And this, I think, is going to be the first of many. And we're prepared to lead that discussion. Well, I would support another political party, as you probably are not surprised to hear. But in the interim, I would hope that we have some stability in the voices that are at the table. Dominic LeBlanc has now been down to Mar-a-Lago. He's continued his relationships with the individuals he met there. He has an established relationship with all of the premiers. And so having at least that continuity in the interim, I would hope that we would be able to see. But I'm looking forward to the next Prime Minister being somebody who will support our aspirations to double our oil and gas production, remove the carbon tax, make sure that we do not have an emissions cap on production, which we know is a production cap, get rid of net zero vehicle mandates by 2026, get rid of net zero power mandates, stay in their own lane. So those would be that's my wish list of whoever happens to be the next Prime Minister. We already do a lot of coordination. Doug Ford is the lead of the Council of the Federation. We've had, I believe, 2 online meetings, 1 in-person meeting, and we're arranging for another online meeting on January the 8th. So I would say, and I'm in regular touch with Doug, so I would say that there's going to be a lot of coordination between the parties through the Council of the Federation, which seems to be the entity that has the most stability right now. I don't think that there's anyone at the table right now who's coming up for immediate election. That's what I am hoping to do, is to listen to the concerns of all the other premiers and make sure that I'm reflecting that. That's what I do when I go on U.S. media, is I talk in terms of what's good for Canada. Obviously, oil and gas is a really important point of leverage, I believe, but there's others. I mean, look at the auto manufacturing sector. It goes back and forth across the border, those parts, 6 or 7 times before a car is completed. You look at British Columbia. They have germanium as one of the critical minerals that China has identified as on an export ban. You can get it from BC. You can get antimony from Ontario. You can get gallium from Quebec. You can get uranium from Saskatchewan. In fact, Saskatchewan is a principal supplier of the world of uranium. 20% of the global uranium supply is provided by Canada. 7,000 tons per year, 85% of which we export, and we can do more. So I would say that we have a very holistic approach that we can take with the strengths of every province and every territory, and it is going to be up to the provincial and territorial leaders to make that case, and I intend to be making that strongly.